Alare, alare, ala, alare, Govinda, alare, ala, alare, ala, alare, Govinda, alare.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Shine.com, India's leading job portal, we welcome you all to the 17th Hindustan Times Shine HR Conclave, the Hyderabad chapter. This evening, we aim to have a panel discussion where we will look at how HR can get the edge on capability and deliver to organizational expectations of today. The theme for the conclave is Building HR for Business Growth. To set the context of the discussion and to outline the objectives of the evening, may I request Mr. Zairus Master, Business Head Shine.com, to deliver the welcome note. Zairus has over 16 years of experience in sales and marketing. He started his career with Unilever, where he worked for over 10 years in various positions. Subsequently, he has also worked with Nokia India and Airtel. Zairus is a postgraduate management from Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow. Zairus.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Shine and Hindustan Times, I'd like to welcome you to the 17th HT Shine HR Conclave, the Hyderabad chapter. After a series of 16 successful conclaves in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, and Pune, we are here back in Bangalore for the 17th edition. And we unveil the theme for forthcoming discussions, which is Building HR for Business Growth. The controlled economic growth and challenging business environment have become the new mandate for any business. Though India still enjoys a better economic growth than its peers, however, the impact of global slowdown is likely to stay for a longer period. There is hence a cautious optimism in the business world. And I emphasize the word cautious, as between the two economic depressions, the corporate landscape has changed significantly. Some of the leading firms that had a history in the past are no longer there, and some of the leading firms today have no history at all. So, what has defined success for companies within the turbulent economic and business environment of the recent past? Successful companies have been those who have continuously renewed themselves to remain relevant and keep pace with the changing times. They have gone beyond business as usual and redefined the normal for themselves. At the best companies, HR has been at the forefront of defining how the bar keeps rising and how the normal keeps changing. HR leaders in these organizations have led the business with energy, zeal, and enthusiasm, along with fresh ideas to strengthen the organizational resolve and ability to transform and create a better future. In effect, as the business scene continues to be increasing competitive and growth gets defined by new technologies and emerging markets, HR needs to continuously evolve and build for the new challenges and take on the new normal. Today, top HR leaders are therefore here to take up the agenda on how they are pushing the boundaries and challenging conventional thinking. The discussions, I promise you, won't be incisive. So without further ado, I welcome you all to the 17th HT Shine HR Conclave, the Hyderabad chapter, whose theme aptly is Building HR for Business Growth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Zairus. Before the start of today's session, I would like to mention our sponsors: relocation partner DRS Group, Agarwal Packers and Movers; recruitment software partner Application Tracking System; academic partner Srivasavi College; event partners Aparna Constructions, HNR Block India, NRI Engineering College, and Srinivasa Institute of Engineering and Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, to kick off today's discussion, it is my pleasure to introduce today's esteemed panel. May I first invite Dr. P. Kiranmay Dutt, Head HR AMD Greater Asia. Dr. Kiranmay Dutt brings together a unique blend of keen academic focus and organizational experience. She has successfully straddled diverse roles in teaching, training, human resource development, consulting, quality, and technical writing. Dr. Dutt, in her current role as the Head of Human Resources AMD Greater Asia, handles the region responsibility for strategic plans on talent acquisition, talent management, and talent development, and partners with the human resource leaders in a first team to represent the employee voice in the region. Prior to joining AMD, Kiranmai was an Associate Director, Center of Leadership, Innovation and Change, ISB, a globally ranked B school. She is closely associated with the local industry, has contributed to the enhancement of professional skills by grooming many corporate executives. She is currently the Vice Chairman, American Chamber of Commerce, Hyderabad, National Council member and past Chairperson of the Indian Society for Training and Development, and charter member of the Indus Entrepreneurs and member of IT and ITES Association of AP. I now invite Prabhakar Lingareddy, Vice President HR ITC Limited. Mr. Prabhakar is Vice President Human Resources at the Agribusiness Division of ITC, a leading Indian conglomerate, and is a member of the Management Committee of the business. An alumnus of KREC Surathkal and XLRI Jamshedpur, he has been associated with ITC for 19 years in different capacities across businesses, including information technology and their corporate office. He has also worked with TVS Motors and Murugappa Group prior to this. He has had experience in all facets of HR and ER in his 26 years of experience, apart from stints in IT and business planning. He has been actively associated with National HRD Network, India's leading body for HR professionals since 2007. He was the National Treasurer from 2011 to 13. He is now Regional President South for NHRD. I now invite Mr. Samit Nag, Global Hiring and HRSS Leader, Genpact LLC. Samit Nag is the Global Hiring and HRSS Leader at Genpact LLC. He has over 16 years of experience in business HR across manufacturing, services, infrastructure, and business process outsourcing. At Genpact LLC, he is responsible for hiring over 20,000 employees over 20 countries. He is also responsible for HR shared services delivery across the employee life cycle. An alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, Samit has experience of managing HR and L&D function for industry vertical cutting across energy, utilities, consumer goods, high-tech, aviation, chemical, media and publishing, transportation and logistics, hospitality and automobile verticals. I now invite Mr. Suresh Anubolu, Head HR, GVK Biosciences. Mr. Anubolu, presently heading the HR function at GVK Biosciences Private Limited, has been in the industry for more than 19 years. His experience in driving HR function in different organizations spanning MNC and Indian corporates, product and service domains, and IT and pharma industries makes him unique. At GVK Biosciences, he drove the HR mantra of being credible, measurable, and value-added HR, which helped in positioning the HR function from an operational function to business-enabling one. He pushed the organizational growth along with his CEO using various OD and HR initiatives, which resulted in 33% growth in revenue and 62% increase in EBITDA during the financial year. Prior to joining GVK Bio, Suresh was associated with CA India Technologies Limited for 6.5 years at their Hyderabad office. Suresh is a graduate in mechanical engineering and holds a postgraduate diploma in human resource management. He is passionate about HR and would like to see HR professionals in boardrooms. I now invite Debobrat Mishra, Director, Hay Group, to moderate today's discussion. Debobrat Mishra, or Debu as he is popularly called, is a director with Hay Group and lives in Mumbai. He leads the board consulting practice for the company. Debu is a well-organized organizational transformation and change specialist, coach, consultant, and innovation practitioner. He has 2 decades of experience with clients across India, Middle East, China, and Africa. Debu has previously worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers, Arthur Andersen Business Consulting, and Hewitt Associates. His work as a leadership coach and consultant has been with clients in India and Middle East across banking, manufacturing, ITES, conglomerates, infrastructure, and FMCG. Debu regularly anchors workshops and conferences. He is also an intermittent blogger and social media participant. Debu, now I invite you to take over. Thank you.
Thank you. First time that I'm going to be moderating a panel. I'm usually a speaker. But I think the last HT conference that we had, I probably asked too many difficult questions to my co-panelists, so they decided to make me a moderator and then try and stay focused on that. So to begin with, what we want to do is that, we'll start the focus on the topic of building HR for business growth. And what I thought would be interesting is to look at three aspects of the topic, which is defining business growth. So what do we mean by business growth? And I'll table that question to my panelists. Looking at how HR contributes to business growth. And the third aspect of, therefore, what does HR need to build in order to play that role? So very specific just focus areas for the deliberations today evening. And what I would like the panelists to do is probably, take a shot at stating their viewpoints first, and then we will evolve the discussion as we go along. So, Prabhakar, can I request you to begin the deliberations, please?
Thank you, Debu. Thank you, HT, for giving this opportunity. Just one caveat before I share my thoughts. Whatever I share are my personal views and not necessarily the views of the organization. And I guess that would be true for all the panelists here. Looking at the topic, building HR for business growth, and fortunately I've got the opportunity to be opening batsman. I thought let me look at each of these four words. I think I would like to start with the word building. And typically when you look at building, what comes to my mind is, okay, I construct something and then it stops. I would probably like to put forth an idea in this context, in the context of the panel discussion. When I'm saying building, it's how do we stay relevant? And therefore it is a continuous process. It's not like I build something and then stop it. So that's one perspective on building a market. When you're looking at HR, what I would like to sort of look at is HR is not necessarily the HR function, but here when we're talking about HR, it's every human resource in the organization. Looking at business, very often we look at business purely from an economic perspective. I think it is my point of view during the discussion would be to look in a more holistic manner when we're talking about business, which would encompass therefore not just the economic part of it, but also the social and environmental part of it. And lastly, when we're looking at growth, very often we look at growth more in terms of 2x, 3x, etc. I would like to make two perspectives here. One perspective is there is something which is a tangible growth, but there is equally a perspective of intangible growth, be it in terms of brand, equity, etc. And when we're talking about building HR for business growth, we also need to look at the intangible perspective. The second dimension is when we're looking at growth. If I am sort of required to close down a branch or a business or any vertical, very often we think that it's a closure, but it's actually part of the process of growth. So when we look at building data, we look at all possible scenarios, be it in terms of restructuring, rationalization, turnaround, expansion, new businesses. So that's the perspective on which I would probably be sharing my thoughts on this.
Round of opening remarks.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's been really warm out here in Hyderabad, I'm sure those of you who have been part of. So we had some welcome showers beginning, and I think HT Shine coming in and bringing in this curtain raiser across the country, including Hyderabad, on HR and its relevance, specifically looking at business, I think is really something which resonates with most of you, just as it resonates with us. As Prabhakar being the opening batsman, he touched upon various nuances of HR. While we're looking at it, it's not just a function, but we are an integral part of the organization, the entity itself. The way I would define HR, because there's always a defining moment for every single one of us as individuals, as well as professionals, and when you are part of an entity which is larger than us. I would always define HR as organization help doctors. Just as we talk about doctors we go to for diagnostics, as well as a regular preventive care, right? Not necessarily curative, not necessarily. So it's similar parlance when you're talking about an organization health, which is what Prabhakar touched upon, sustenance as well as scale. Because the moment you talk about growth, it's a business entity. The two things which come in is, can it sustain itself? Do we hear of this organization 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line? Does it exist at all? Or is it one of those which is going to vanish? So the sustenance is something which is key. And one of the definite levers we would look at it is from human resources angle. And the other one, when we're talking about beyond sustenance, is growth is also, because growth does not always mean leaps and bounds, just staying there, existing, being current, which is the brand equity, positioning, and so on, is really, really important. The second one, or the dimension we would look at, is obviously with respect to scale. So can we build scale? Scale comes in different ways. Scale could be in terms of the global footprint, your outreach. Scale could be in terms of the market segments which you want to reach out. Scale could be in terms of the product portfolio you have. So you start services, depending on what business you are into. So you can start looking at it using different frameworks. But for each one of those, or multiple levers you want to push or pull, you definitely need a doctor to consult, just as you would need others to consult. So that's where I would put my positioning when we're talking about human resources, and especially this function and its credibility. With that, I would actually stop or pause, and then we will hear other nuances, and we'll come back to this.
Thanks, Kiran. And there's quite some interesting aspects there. We'll come back to that. So, Suresh, we'd love to hear your views.
Thank you very much, Dave. And good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for taking time out. It's a Friday evening. I know that most of you want to go home and spend time with your family. Thanks for that, taking your 2 hours of time. The topic, what she has given to this panel members is, topic is very, very close to me. I have thought through that the last years, especially working for GVK Bio. These are some of the questions my CEO posed to me on regular basis. Maybe in a different forms, how are you adding the value to your function for a business growth? So that's kind of a questions very frequent between me and CEO, me and board. So it's very close to me, this topic. Thanks for choosing this topic, wonderful topic. When you say building HR capability for business growth, the fundamental and first and foremost question comes to my mind is, before talking about HR capability, do we understand business as much that need to be before creating HR capability? That's the first question comes to me. Do we? Okay. Once we say we do understand business, it's a type of business, the customers, stakeholders, and know what is their expectations. The second foremost thing we need to understand before creating HR capability is what form of business growth the organization is going through or is expecting is most important, the form of business growth. What is the form of business growth? Because the business can grow through organic models. The models required for organic growth of business are very, very different than an organization decided to grow inorganically. The competencies are different, the frameworks are different, the practices are different. So very important is, what is the form of business growth the board and CEO is expecting is very important. Once we understand that, whether organic, inorganic, or we are growing some particular markets in a global market, or we are going to grow our business through some innovative product, the second context is what kind of HR capability we need to build as a function, as a team, to meet that needs. So we are going to talk more about it in the during course of time.
Thank you. Samir, would you reflect upon some of the aspects that the other panelists have already discussed, and also bring in a bit of perspective from your organization and your experience as to the relevance to the topic as well?
Sure.
such a large forum of HR, I presume folks who are working as HR managers, HR leaders, and also folks who must be interested in HR as a function. So it reinforces, the capability of HR as a function. And we see so many people together. If you really look at it, as far as my perspectives are concerned, I think there are three broad pillars which define HR's capability in supporting and building growth. The first that I look at is smart processes. And when I say smart processes, from my experience, it's about having processes that are scalable. For example, if you were to look at a recruitment process, can that scale tomorrow from hiring, say, 50 people to scaling 1,000 people? Can it be scalable from recruiting various types of skills that the customers are demanding for? Policies, smart policies. Policies where the nuances of regions and how you are building your global footprint does not come in the way of not being able to support growth. And you understanding as HR managers what's different from one region to other. What's true for India need not be true for Europe and need not be true for the rest of Asia. And third is technology. Companies grow not only in terms of companies grow not only in terms of just the pure parlance of growth. HR contribution is in growth in times of basically restructuring and also in times of consolidation. And we heard about sustenance. Sustenance has got a lot to do with the overall restructuring and consolidation phase. So how does, when a company is going ahead and say acquiring another company for growth, how does your technology platforms be suitable for you to go ahead and integrate them? How you have to ensure that your HR platforms can be bolt-on applications or upgrades. So I think each of these three pillars fundamentally can define how you will be ready from your competency standpoint to support growth.
Thanks, Amit. So interestingly, what if you look at the key themes that are emerging from your experiences, there is a bit around sustenance and growth. The challenges between it's not just growth but also sustenance. And it is not just economic but a bit reaching out into social as well. The social part of the enterprise. Kiranmai, you talked about organization health, so that HR is the custodian or the specialist around organization health. We also, heard the perspective of, being a part of the custodian of what the business really needs. Suresh, your own experiences, I like the fact that your CEO asks you, how are you adding value? So that's the constant question. And some of the elements around the elements of what HR has to deliver, so processes, policy, and also deal with technology, as Samit was pointing out. So if we were to, take a deep dive into this whole piece around sustenance versus growth. So any experiences around from your organization and your personal experiences of what kind of nuances are there when you're looking at sustenance versus when you're looking at growth, and what challenges do they bring? Kiranmai, you would like to take a shot at that?
That's a very interesting framework when you start looking at any of us. You can start with a simple analogy and say, our own life cycle. Any organism has a life cycle. All of us know. Any living entity would have a life cycle stage. So what you would require for succor and nourishment at a particular stage in your life cycle would be different from the next stage. The same is true for any organization. So when you're talking about growth, we're talking about an organization which is already a toddler or an infant, let's say, but now it has to really get nimble and grow fast. Now, if you're looking at it, that's still at an early stage, but it wants to grow inorganically, because Suresh also touched about organic and inorganic growth. Couple of levers you would pull from is obviously today all of us are familiar. You talk about acquiring organizations which are either similar or dissimilar so that you can create that integration and move faster into a different product segment. So you look for your blue oceans or green oceans, depending on what you're really looking for, and then start expanding. And when you're talking about really moving into a new either markets or product portfolio or services, obviously there's an acquisition or a JV or any of these levers which you're going to pull in. The moment you're talking about any of these business related levers, clearly from a HR portfolio, there is talent coming in, whichever way you look at it. How do you manage talent? What are the dimensions or skill set? Because there is a culture piece coming in. What is it that you really have to think? And what happens to your existing talent? Because now suddenly the entity becomes different because there are new stakeholders walking in or joining in. So how would that change? Lots of things change for us. The moment the family expands, you see either it's very exciting or sometimes it can be, oh no, this is a visitor which we don't want to, but then it's an unhappy way of, but there are certain hooks where we have to go together. So you look at it from a personal stint as well. We all experience it at different stages, but we embrace it and we adapt to it. Similarly, an organization needs to go through it. So if you're looking at it from that lens, the primary skill set or competency we are focusing on is change management. If you really have to pinpoint and say, what is the most important thing out there as an ingredient really for human resources to leverage and move forward, it's change management. Because there's a mind share shift. You'll have to look at the existing talent, how they need to embrace it or move on. So if they have to embrace it or adapt to it or move on, whichever it is, the change management. So any of us who have been experts at it or at least dabbled in it, wherever you are in the life cycle, very clearly you understand how to move about it. How do you really take someone along from stage A to stage D in terms of denial to final acceptance? So that's going to be the most important lever really you have to walk through. On the other hand, the other piece we've talked about is if you're looking at organic growth, which means there is an incremental growth happening in terms of revenues and your product diversification, it is not inorganic. There it's going to be more of economies of scale you'll have to build in, and the expectations of your employees in terms of, so you can't lose talent. You have to continue to sustain and keep them. The engagement can be challenging year after year. How do you keep them happy, contented, focused, and committed? Are they going to? So what kind of generational cohorts do you have in your organization with respect to the talent? What is the larger ecosystem, the macro system, with respect to the talent markets? So can you keep them? Where are you positioned as an employer in that talent market or the ecosystem you are part of? So can you continue to keep them even when you're saying I'll grow organically? How does that work? Because there could be other stakeholders who will come in or someone else puts up shop. What happens today, whatever you are happy with or contented with, will change tomorrow. Because it's a dynamic market. You can't control the external market. You can perhaps control the internal stakeholder view. But that changes all of a sudden the moment there are a few other players coming in and setting up shop. So how do you continue to? So even in that model, you'll have to look at that sustenance, which is more of keeping your employees engaged. What is the hook? I love the word what Suresh used, the value proposition. Just as a business leader would challenge you, I would challenge each one of us to say, what is my value proposition to come here, to come to work every day? What is it which keeps me going? So what would it be for my key talent really, or the high potentials? I mean, you can use any of those terms and say, what is it which keeps them going really? How do I ensure that they stay with me while I'm on this journey? So this is my strategy. I'll grow only organically. Even there, you'll continue to look at your talent and invest in their development. Most often, that is something which takes, we would go and acquire talent. We'll be gung-ho about acquiring talent. Till they attain their productive efficiencies, we'll invest in their development. But the moment it reaches that productive efficiencies, most of the organizations get into a kind of a positioning where that's a cost play. It's no longer a revenue play. So what do? You tend to cut down on your budgets with respect to, because you don't have incremental, because you start looking at the P&L piece and the bottom line and the top line, and hence you stop really investing in the talent. So talent engagement goes hand in hand with talent development, and if you don't continue to invest in your talent, you will not get the value proposition or the hook which the employee feels. So even in that, in organic growth, there are certain levers you pull from. In organic growth, I think the continued focus on employee value proposition and how do you structure it, and the foundation blocks of your culture, your identity, your brand equity, as Prabhakar mentioned, that needs to be, you can't shift it around every second day. What's the value system of the organization? If they find a hook with it, the play of the organization as well as employee, there's a hook there. With that, I pause.
Thanks very much. You know, Prabhakar, use a provocative statement that you would hold a perspective that organic growth need not be incremental. It could be very large scale as well, right? So why don't you share with us some of your experiences?
I'll actually combine that question and your previous question, and then I'll actually share two experiences. And I think that drives the point much more strongly. If you look at really ITC today, we are into different businesses. And today, when we look at our foods business, we are close to about 5,000 crores business. And a business that started about not more than 10 years back. And that's where they go when you're talking of scale. In 10 years' time, with very, very strong competition, it's grown to about 5,000 crores. I link it now to in terms of where does HR fit into it? It all sort of emanated from the way you define your core competence. ITC was in cigarettes, it was in hotels, it was in the paper business. If I define my core competence as cigarettes, hotels, and paper, I don't think foods business would have seen the light of the day. The way we defined core competence was the cigarette business had a core competency of building brands, distribution reach to the nook and corner. The paper business gave a core competency of packaging. The hotels business gave us a core competence of understanding the palate of Indian consumer. These were the three, and the agriculture business gave us the core competency of sourcing the right raw material from any parts of the country. Now, when you look at it on the face of it, they're all four very, very different things. And if one were to go back to late Prahlad's theory that you're not sticking to the knitting, it would have been a very different proposition. But here, the way we define the core competencies, plus there was an external context which was an outside-in perspective that branded packaged foods would be the driver of the day, maybe in years to come. And when you sort of combine all these competencies, you find a very, very competitive recipe for you to sort of start a business. And that's a classic example of growth and competence. Same way when I look at sustenance, and I'll link it again to a real life experience. I don't know how many of you are familiar with a place called Munger in Bihar. It's a very, very remote place, backward district. And there we had a challenge wherein there used to be a concept of Bahali. Every time a worker retires, he could nominate one person to fill in the job. And invariably he would nominate the person who probably has no other option. Low on skill, low on attitude, everything is low. And you had no other option but to continue recruiting. With technology coming in, you needed productivity improvement, you required a different skills. One classic this thing would have been is work through a VR and manage the entire thing. But we had a fundamental belief saying that business cannot succeed in societies that fail. We might have done a VR, pushed our way through, but would it have created goodwill in the local society and helped us to sustain a business in that sort of a geography? Answer would have been probably no. What we did there was that if we have to handle this, we need to find an alternative livelihood for that particular ecosystem. And we started first on a track of creating that livelihood model in the form of dairy, because that was something which was very attractive, relevant for that particular geography. So we started on a whole initiative of working on livestock management and creating that entire dairy value chain, so that tomorrow when we are required to actually get into this system of stopping bahalis, people will have an alternative means of livelihood. This happened about 7 years, 8 years back. You would be surprised to know that today we are on the verge of